only going to give brief introductions because if you've been here before, you probably know us, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. We have a lot to talk about. So to my left, Linda CHIARELLI. Linda is a Senior Vice President for Capital Projects and Facilities for NYU. She joined NYU 6 years ago and has been involved in various aspects of construction and real estate for 34 years. To her left, MARIANA CIRCUIMARU, a 29-year veteran in the design, construction, and development fields. MARIANA has been with BentallGreenOak for the past 5 years as Managing Director, head of their U.S. value-add portfolio, overseeing all projects in the USA for BGO. And to her left is Linda FOGGIE. Linda has worked in the design and construction industry for 20 years and joined Turner & Townsend as Executive Vice President and head of the East USA 2 years ago. She is based in New York and also serves on the company's board of directors. And I should have mentioned, I'm Sabrina Canner. I'm with Brookfield Properties, and I've been with Brookfield for 39 years, managing design, construction, and development, as we all have been. So let's get started. So much has happened since we were in this panel last, right? I mean, the whole world changed. Let's start with COVID. So we've experienced a whirlwind 18 months that have changed the world. Everything shifted, new practices in the design and planning of buildings as well as interior spaces. What changes have emerged as lasting best practices? Linda CHIARELLI, let's start with you.
Sure. So I feel like the past year and a half was a pretty quick experiment in shifting to remote work. And I think it still has to play out a little bit on what the long-term piece is to that. Most people miss being collaborative in the same space. So I don't see a 100% remote world. But even with partial remote, it doesn't necessarily mean you need less space. You need different space, right? Because you need places that if you have shared workstations, you need places people can get together to talk, to have private phone calls if you're going to open plan. The one thing that I think there's no going back on is in design going forward is really paying attention to the ventilation in space. I think that's the one thing that we really, a takeaway that's not going to leave us, because it's not just COVID related, right? It's any sort of diseases that might be coming around.
Health and wellness.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. MARIANA?
Yeah, if I can complete just to Linda's expose here on the COVID and how the buildings receive that and how they trying and to accommodate a new era, right? A new stage that we are looking at, and how the people had changed the focus that it was prior to that to now health, mental health, wellness, and everything came into this big picture with the fact that yes, we were working at home for a while, but then we didn't miss the commute. We didn't miss, running for the train or looking for a parking spot. But all of a sudden, we missed the human connection, and that we couldn't get that through anything. So the return to the office. It's clear, it's just the natural. I mean, I don't, people will say, well, the company makes us come back to work. I mean, I think it's the first step that you need to make. And once you are in the office, you realize that, I really like to be here. And then what else businesses realize, business owners especially, is that you are more productive and when you are happy and you have a different life balance. And when you are in a space that caters to your needs as a human being only, not only as a worker or a workforce or a person in a business model, and you are a human being, and that it's making now the transition into what we've seen in development, in design, in development of buildings, in air quality, in natural lights, in new envelopes that are being designed, and there are new trends. And this new trends, someone else before my turn said that these trends were in the market before COVID came. And now they just accelerated, and now the focus changed, and we know that we want to live better, right? And we want to have a better quality of life. And those trends are in now design, and I'm just gonna go a little bit in specifics, but the materials that we pick when we build a space, it's a newer architecture, a new component that is now developing, the biophilia on materials. Like when we design interior spaces, we really look at new science, the science behind that, and cater to what humans need.
Yeah, I would venture to say that if something makes sense from a real estate point of view, absent COVID, that it remains best practice, and much of this is accelerated, which is, I think, is exactly what you're both saying.
And Sabrina, I'll add, one of the things that's interesting in design and construction, I deal a lot on the client side, and so I think the last speaker talked about becoming really technically proficient. So once you get good at figuring out how to design and build things, that's one thing. But there's a whole other element of pushing clients to make decisions in a timely fashion that is a big element of design and construction. And so one of the things that I found very interesting that shifted during COVID is that big companies that historically moved very slow with their decision making had to figure out how to take on war room decision making techniques just to get their business operating every day. But what happened is that they took some lessons and learned kind of how to make decisions quickly, efficiently, effective to get the right people to the table, just decide and move forward. And it sort of has spilled over to other aspects of the business, like design and construction. And so it's one of the things that shifted that appears to be here to stay, or people are really adopting it. It was very, very useful.
Well, that's good news, actually. So supply chain issues continue to torment project delivery. What disruptions are you seeing, and how are you coping with them? And Linda Foggie, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. So, well, there were all of the issues with a lot of the materials that come out of the Far East, things that came from Asia. But then what started to happen is that Asia started to reopen while the rest of the world was still struggling. So they were cranking out and producing things. And then we saw disruptions in other areas where you couldn't get things through in terms of cargo and the shipping. And so some of that still exists. It's very varied. But what we've been doing to mitigate it is we start early on in the design process, a lot earlier than we used to, really being strategic about material selection in the design phase and understanding at the point of material selection, where is the material going to be sourced from? And if it's from a part of the world where there is trouble, because we keep a very close watch on this, we really need to make a different decision early on. And so that's one of the things that's been a really useful technique. But as well, we're really encouraging clients to buy early. And so very, very early in the process, we're actually having contractors place orders. We're advising clients to bring on CMs instead of waiting until they're in a full out bid with a GC. And get the materials ordered and ready. Even if you have to pay to store them in a warehouse, they'll be there for you when you need them. And so those are a couple of the things that we've been doing to really mitigate the supply chain issues.
Yeah, still not a guarantee. Still play whack-a-mole a little bit, but
Yeah.
And Mariana. what do you
Yeah,
think?
no, definitely. That's right on the money. I mean, we're looking at substitutes, and just want to mention one other thing. So the lead time, right? All these materials that we're looking to procure for the construction, looking at the lead time and looking at local suppliers. What does local supplier does to you? Can bring the product faster and quicker, but at a higher cost. So the spike in construction cost that is reflected everywhere else, when cost overruns, and but we had to do it because you still need to continue and progress with the project, and you do your economics and you take that upcharge from buying product that is produced domestically, in this country, although the raw material may come from other country, but the thing is that, yeah, that helped a lot. They'll pay a premium and keep the project going. And labor shortage also, we kind of dealt with that too. And qualified labor, which is, we know, not necessarily in New York City, because there are so many immigrants, we do have labor more or less, but in other parts of the country, we do see that, and glazers, welders, and I think we'll get even worse with baby boomers retiring and not having new generation join the workforce.
I think that's right. Many companies are mandating vaccinations for their workers. How is your company dealing with the vaccination question, and how does this apply to construction job sites? Linda Chiarelli?
Sure. Well, a lot of you have an affiliation with NYU, or you at least went through what everyone has to go through every day to get here today. So everyone is everyone is compliant, which could be vaccinated, or there are some percentage of people who get a medical small percentage or religious waiver on the employee side. Then when we have visitors, they must be vaccinated. So the guy who delivers water to our office has to go through what everyone who's not an NYU affiliate in this room went through today to get cleared. And that seems to be going very well, even on our union side. In fact, the company that does our cleaning for us is at 99 point something, and that's all union. And that point person got moved to a site that doesn't require vaccination. On the construction sites, we have not been mandating it. We talk about it. Our biggest construction site is a standalone building, so there's no interface with the NYU population. We're starting to hear that some of the construction managers are going to drive it, which, just from a owner's perspective, it would be my preference, because then they're not saying that I forced them to do it. They're taking it on themselves, and hopefully that will mitigate some of the costs that they want to pass on to us, or at least our position on them. And the big fear is that that's a low number. The trade workers right now, it's a very low vaccination rate, and we want to encourage people to be vaccinated, but the number of workers and keeping the manpower at the site is important too.
It is. Mariana?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to sound political, but thank God for the vaccine. So we reopened the economy. Our company, BentallGreenOak, they following the CDC rules and the state rules, and above and beyond, they offer this rapid COVID test every Monday and Tuesday morning, and it's on voluntary basis, and I think helps to build up confidence. And with the job sites, it's up to the contractor, and of course, the contractors are smart enough to keep the job going, and they have all kinds of measures, like Linda said, and procedures, and they follow up through. And not only that, but I was reading recently that the incidents of accidents in construction fields are coming down, are now at a lower rate. And I think that has to do with the fact that it's cleaner, that they have to check in for temperature, and more people watching the site. I think it's
more mindful.
More mindful. And of course,
awareness.
it comes with a cost, right?
Sure.
Like that we're going to pay for it at the other end.
But is your company mandating?
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
to
gotcha.
come to, not to work for the company, but to work from the office is mandated. If you're not vaccinated, and I don't think we have too many, but I believe they're not coming to the office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Linda?
So my company hasn't mandated it either, but we did ask people to let us know if they were vaccinated or not. And some of our clients are mandating it, and so in those cases, we follow suit with the clients. But I think about 75% of our people have said that they are vaccinated. But we also haven't compelled them to come back to the office yet. They won't be compelled until after the first of the year. So we're a little slow on it. But what's super interesting I found is, you're right, Linda, the private side clients are a little hesitant to be the one to say that they want to require and force everybody on the job site to be vaccinated. But they've started to ask very directly in their RFPs, please tell us the percentage of your employees that are fully vaccinated, and please ask any subcontractors that are going to bid on our job. So they're sort of indicating that it's of interest to them without going so far as to say that they're requiring it.
But it'll be built into the price.
It will be built into the price,
yes.
and they've been open to say that it will factor into the decision about who wins.
Yeah, I know we have offered vaccinations several times on several of our jobs. we don't get a lot of takers. So I think you either mandate or you don't get it. So we're going to pivot a little bit here. And construction is always characterized as slow to embrace technology. Today, there seems to be an abundance of choices, though. Products that will improve safety, schedule, energy efficiency, user experience. How do you evaluate these? How do you sift through them and see what's offered to decide what should actually be implemented? Mariana?
Well, we did spend lots of time, and you know my opinion on construction and you know how ready it is to embrace new technologies. I think really slow, right? So we're not really up there, and we know there are reasons, right? Every new technology comes with a risk. Developers are not willing to take the risk until it's all, you know, vetted through and we know it works. But this period of time, for the past 18 months, a lot of new technology products in terms of softwares and mostly softwares and the drones and the site survey by this virtual drones. I think those are great. They were implemented. We got some of them and we used them, and they were instrumental in few projects, and especially with not being able to travel. They were great. But I still, there is a lot of room for construction to improve. Take advantage of the digital, of the cloud-based softwares and everything, but not only in the management. I mean, the management and design maybe, it's a little bit more up to speed, but the trades and the workers and the job sites, I think those are not taking advantage of all these new technologies that can increase productivity and definitely attract new generation to work in construction. I believe that if we get a way around that, I think will be great throughout. But and then another aspect I want to mention on the building operations, there were a lot of products coming in with solutions on how to save energy, how to count how many people are coming in the building, go out of the building. Some of them, we actually, our company kind of piloted some of them. They have gaps and challenges. They still need to be developed and go through a full cycle. I think there is hope, but it's we are in the beginning of this phase, implementing it.
And Linda Chiarelli?
Sure. Well, you mentioned the operations side. That's the one side that I feel is pretty well developed already. I mean, through all of this time, I can sit at my desk and open up a certain classroom and see how much air is coming into the room, how many air changes per hour, what's the temperature, is it where it should be, which is great, probably something that didn't get used as much as it's getting used right now. I mean, we do have people that check every day. They go through all of the buildings and have always done that. That's part of their job description. So on the operations side is one thing. The construction side's tough. It's all so expensive, actually, on the job site itself. And on the management side, we're making the decisions the same way we did back when Dahlia was involved, helping us pick a new program, 15 years ago. Research, right? You do a lot of research, you talk to other clients, you look into it as much as you can, you do test runs, you try to see if it's gonna work, but then, Sabrina, you said it in one of our prep, at some point you're taking a leap. And you're just making the commitment and you're hoping it works and dealing with what doesn't work as it comes along. And then after you take that leap, I think the most important thing is the change management. Everyone says people don't like change. And the studies that they do now, it's not that people don't like change, they don't like to change, which is a little bit different. They're okay when you get them to the end point. It's going from A to B that they have a problem with, and so you have to help them along and manage it.
Yep. But I think you're right, and just to quote myself, I think if we don't take a leap, if we don't test things, we don't move the ball up the field. And then you collect your data and you make your next decision, but it's important to try. And Linda, Foggie, don't know if you have anything to add to that.
You all covered it really well. The only one thing I'd add is I was just telling Joanne that I was at a technology and real estate conference yesterday in Vegas, actually. A lot of innovation in this space, but one area that's getting very high interest from both landlords, investors, and occupiers is around touchless technology. In so many ways, everything from not having to touch locks and latches, from getting rid of badges to come in and out of spaces, integrating the base building security systems with the tenant spaces so that people can just operate things from their phones, because people don't want to touch things anymore, but they don't mind touching their phones. And so figuring out how to integrate touchless into as many systems as possible is something that's getting huge interest.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so all building typologies are now viewed through the lens of hospitality, whether as an enticement to lease office space or residential units. What are you doing differently on your projects, and is it working, especially with respect to return to work, return to school, and return to live in the city? So why don't we start with Linda CHIARELLI and return to school.
Right. So hospitality is a little different in a university, and you know, what makes NYU special, one of its really great features, is that it's right in the middle of New York City. What makes it hard from a hospitality standpoint is that it's right in the middle of New York City, right? We have old buildings, we have congested buildings, very full. We've got you know, all of the challenges that you would expect from that. And what do students want? They want casual space. We have classrooms, we have all the classrooms set up, that's covered. We have the academic space. We always want more labs, of course, and we're always working on more labs. But it's the casual spaces that are really, and this is way pre-COVID, it was highlighted during COVID, outdoor spaces, casual spaces. The major project that we have underway has a lot of that built into it. And it's just a challenge on how to fit it into existing buildings that are already packed to the gills and operating. So.
Okay, Mariana.
Yeah, definitely hospitality, and this, you know, leads me to talk about amenities in buildings. And there were panels here talking about what the tenant want, right? That's what you build. And these occupiers of buildings are now being very interested. They were interested before, but now even more into, you know, spaces for collaborations, gyms, fresh air, and that's also a big component, air quality. And BGO went to the extent of going to that extent to get some of the buildings that were capable to be certified would fit well, so all the air was measured. That report was posted, sent to tenants, so tenants got that that kind of safety feeling that, okay, the air is clean. And then, you know, what you do not only in your space, in your suite, in your pre-built or built out space office, but what you can do in the building as a whole. Do you have terrace spaces? Do you have outdoors? Do you have food retails on the first floor, easy to access, and lounge, conference, and so forth? So that's key. And then how you build that, how you furnish it, and how you accessorize it, because now that's a good thing that came out of it. This you know, make you feel at home or in a space that you like to be, right? You're going to be more productive if you do that.
Right. So, Linda, Foggie, after a year at home, are people looking to hospitality mode in the office to come back to work? What do you find?
I would say yes. I like this question because I get to use one of my favorite words that the architects came up with, resimercial, which is the combination of residential and commercial. And it was sort of a thing before COVID, but I think it's even more influential at this point because people have so integrated their work and their home and their living together, and so working from home and at home, and now trying to encourage them to come back to the office there's this sort of the desire to sort of be able to blend the two. And so you want to see some elements of your home at work and some at, vice versa. And so I think you're starting to see in the spaces the integration of certain residential types of things. So like, for example, we design conference rooms now, and they're architecturally the same size as a normal conference room with a rectangular table and chairs, but instead we get rid of that, and we have a sofa and floor lamps and sort of cool lights, and people have choices. We have regular conference rooms too, but a lot of occupiers are really starting to think about sort of this integration of residential into commercial, and the spaces, to Mariana's point, are meant to feel more comfortable to people and sort of a little bit more casual to them in some ways. It's really about choice and flexibility.
And we're trying everything to get people back, aren't we? So we're going to shift to DEI, ESG, sustainability. And DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as DEI, has become a touch point in all we do. How we envision a project, how we organize our businesses, how we execute on the job site. There's so much to talk about here, so let's start with inclusive design. Working within New York City communities, how have you seen a shift toward inclusive design, and what, in your opinion, needs to change in status quo procedures to really create change and inclusion in the design process? And we're going to go in reverse and start with Linda Foggie this time.
Sure. So it is becoming a really important topic of discussion for, I'm going to talk about it from the occupier angle, and Mariana will probably cover from the developer angle. And so thinking about inclusive design is really, I call it designing spaces that are quite human, but also thinking about the fact that there's a new generation that's entering our workforce, so spaces that are appealing to now we're crossing 5 different generations of workers all together in the workforce that might desire some things alike, but some things that are different. But thinking about also designing spaces that we take a cue here from higher ed, actually, because higher ed is actually really good at designing spaces for all different types of learners. And so different types of learners is not that different than trying to design for different types of workers and work styles. So we're seeing designers be much more thoughtful about that. And then finally, designing spaces that are appropriate for people with special needs that aren't as visible to us. They might be a little bit invisible. And so thinking about, for example, someone who's entering the workforce that may be on the autistic spectrum. And so while we love these workspaces that are flooded with natural light, that might not be appropriate for somebody who's autistic. And so making sure that there's also a space for them with less light. And thinking about someone entering the workforce that might be epileptic, and being very thoughtful about the designs or the patterns that we have on the floors and the walls that might affect them. And so just the fact that thought is going into this is making spaces more human, but more inclusive for more types of workers that are entering the workforce. And so it's a positive thing. I like to say the Generation Z is sort of an activist workforce. It's good. They're pushing us in a good direction, pushing the market in this direction. And so it's really good to see it coming to fruition.
That's great. Mariana, how about including the community and
Yes,
the
and
pressure to involve everybody? We're not just building buildings anymore. We're thinking about the community. We're thinking about our region. We're thinking about the country. So how are you dealing with that?
Yes, and that's a very good point. I mean, I will start from who makes commercial real estate world? Who makes the decision for communities, right? And who participates? What kind of backgrounds and cultural backgrounds and experience come to be at the realm of the real estate and make decisions for the communities that are not one type, right? And the communities are much more integrated and with mixed and diverse needs, right? So I think that's key. First, I would think that it's going to be much better for the communities to have more minorities into the commercial real estate world, because those decisions will be made more mindful, having this experience of a certain minority and of a certain group of people. And then, so that's one aspect that I think that is going to make a huge impact on the communities if we have more diverse population, more diverse professionals in the commercial real estate from all kind of levels, like from construction to engineers to brokers, leasing, lawyers, and so forth. And then when you develop something and you come up with a plan, involve the community at a very early stage, because your project will be much more successful. And we had here, you guys weren't here, but I was happy to be part of that. We have government people talking about zoning, and talking about how important is like landlords and that communication between government and landlords, but then communities, like what the community wants, right? Like we're gonna have to build for that, and it's so much easier to get a project approved. I mean, we're looking at project in Boston, and then the first conversation we had with the 4 Point council were like, oh, there is a bakery on the first floor. You're gonna demolish that? No. So were we going to demolish the old one and we're going to build a new one, and it will be a bakery in the building, and then, oh, it's going to be a lab science building. It's going to be so much vibration, and these buildings around that are old, and what's going to happen to our buildings? And then you get the opportunity to say, no, the labs don't make vibration. They don't want vibration. The building that we build is going to be so better and much reinforced that there will be even, your buildings around my building will be even in much better shape, because there will be no, and then they talk about sound, and, oh, we're going to, exhaust, but that's, all the way high in the air. So your community will get better if this project is part of it. So I think that's important for communication, and getting communities involved, and cater to the community that lives there, and right. Ask what they need and be prepared to respond to that.
I always find too that the more sophisticated a community board is, a community organization is, the easier our jobs are. So
there you go. You said it. Yes.
And I'm going to jump to another question because we're running out of time here. So New York City has enacted and is about to enact some of the most aggressive building performance standards in the country. Local Law 97, I know you've been waiting for this, Linda, and the proposed gas ban. So what are the pros and cons of these laws, and how do you feel they will affect our industry?
Okay, so we have to do something, right? Climate change, we have to deal with it. There's no one who can say that's not an issue. The con is we need the government to help lay out plans that are achievable, that people can strive for, and new construction's one thing. You can make, and we have been for years, right, making them higher and higher and more sustainable, but this shift away from gas, totally on electric, which I would like to see how Con Ed is going to meet that demand. Your reliance on Con Ed being able to, or it's not even just Con Ed, but to green the grid, because that's what we're all going to be banking on. We're going to be putting electric into buildings that would have had some gas, some electric. Now you're all electric. I can't even imagine the discussions when you put your load letter into Con Ed, being able to get that approved. We already have problems. And so how do you take it and move it forward without making it so hard? And that's with new construction. Oh, and then fold into that the fact that we're worried about health and wellness. So we want more air coming into spaces. Well, guess what that does? Just the opposite of because now you have to condition more space, right? More air. You have to heat it, you have to cool it, you're driving your energy usage up. So now you've got a conflict between these two really, really important goals. And then you look at older buildings and how can you possibly retrofit them for, even if you can get to 2024, right? The first hurdle. The next one is tough. It's hard to take older buildings and make them perform at that level in the amount of time that has been given for that. And we don't even have the rules aren't out yet. So no one even has a good feel on how to evaluate it. So
no, I hear you, but we can't give up.
That's why I started with the pro.
That's right. So and I personally feel that there's a lot to be mined down the road of controls and networks and cloud-based controls, and making sure that we're tying our occupancy to our fresh air and to our heating and cooling. because we've found that everybody's hyper-focused now on how much are we occupying our buildings, and sadly, it's 20 to 25% now. But we went back and looked, and when we thought we were 100% occupying, it was somewhere between 50 and 55%. So maybe we're overheating, overcooling.
Right. I mean, the problem is people are sprinkled, right?
Yeah,
so
well,
25% occupancy.
It's controls. It's
right.
controls, right? We've just got to
Well,
get
breaking
smarter.
zones, more.
Agreed. Linda Foggie, so what is the perspective of the tenant on all of this?
So I would start by saying I think if we step back and look at the situation globally, the United States is actually a little bit behind some other countries in Europe. I mean, at least a good 10 to 15 years behind other countries in this. And so it feels big and heavy to us right now. But I think there are, in fact, some lessons we could take from these other countries who are a little bit further ahead of us. And so I kind of admire that New York is really being forward-thinking and going to be a first mover here for the USA on this. I do think that there is some refinement around Local Law 97. You know, like, for example, there's a statistic around the age of the building stock in New York City, and some people here, like Darcy, would know this much better than me, but I think it's something like 70% of our buildings are 70 years or older. And so given the age of the stock, there might be some merit to thinking about this on a portfolio basis. So if you're RXR, let's say you need to achieve these across your portfolio in New York City instead of on every single building. And it might allow for owners and landlords to really be thoughtful about where they're going to make their first investments and what the ROIs are going to be on that. And at the end of the day, we're just after carbon reduction. There's many ways to go about it.
That's right.
So I do think there's still something to be had. As far as occupiers, this is top of mind for occupiers. Not just because of Local Law 97, which a lot of times is impacting building owners and developers more so than the...
Only now.
Yeah.
It'll change.
Yes,
It will.
That'll pass down.
But they're thinking about it because in their companies, the CEOs of all the private companies are making big announcements around sustainability. Sort of their workforces and their clients and customers are demanding it. And so when you don't control the base building and the systems in the building, it's really important that you're on top of your game when you're negotiating your lease or dealing with your landlord, because at the end of the day, this impacts you. And tenants are also thinking about things like, to Sabrina's point, eventually there's going to be these penalties that kick back to tenants who use too much in the building, and how those are going to get spread out, how those are going to look in terms of their leases. They're thinking about green leases. So this is all top of mind. And then the last point I'll raise is that it's true, health and wellness is also top of mind, and some of the mitigations around wellness are counter, as Linda mentioned, to what we're trying to do from a carbon reduction standpoint. And so they're trying to balance that as well.
Same from the investors. They do want sustainability, they do want renewable energies, they want more resilient buildings, and pollute less. Pollution, it's a big factor, and I think we all in this together, and
Except for the city, because
Except for
they
the
don't
city.
have to meet any of the goals in their buildings.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. But anyways, nevertheless, we're going to have to be realistic and think how we're going to achieve it. And we hear all the time, net zero here, net zero there. But how are you going to, sometimes there are constraints. Like, what does that mean? It's just like, don't burn any fossil fuel, zero. So electrify the building totally. And then produce the electricity on site for all your needs, but then produce it with renewable sources, solar and wind. And that gives you a net zero building. I understand it. I understand the science behind, but in some instances will be probably hard to achieve it. But that's why I think we need a pathway. We need a guide. We need guidelines. How to get. We know local law 97, but how to get there, right?
The
Who's going to design?
legislation still needs perfecting, and
Exactly.
they need us. So we'll all have to jump in and work on it. And we're at the end of our time, but our tradition is to end in a lightning round. And today will be the same. So from a design and construction perspective, in one word, are you bullish or bearish on the future of New York City?
Bullish.
Bullish?
Bullish.
Heard it here, double down.